Hi and welcome to the We Need a Rose podcast, and he's an idiot. Comes from upbringing. His parents are probably idiots too. Lorraine, you ever have a kid that acts that way, I'm going to disown you. And David, are you gracing us with a joke this week?
I do. No, I'm not retired. For our esteemed guest on this week's podcast, I have a writer's joke.
Oh no.
That's okay. So, why did the Hollywood... What? No, wait. I've already messed it up. Let me try again. Why did Hollywood stop buying scripts from the frog writer? Because his stories were rivetive. They were rivetive, Neil.
Do you hear that silence, David?
Come on, Charlie.
Do you hear that?
Come on, give me something.
I'm not sure I know what that means. I think we should start again. Can we start again? Is it too late?
I mean, I feel like we should leave it in just to prove how bad that was.
We should definitely leave it in.
It's definitely too far gone.
Yeah. I mean, we're laughing, but just not for the right reasons.
At, not with. Yes. Well, after that extended chaos, and thankfully he hasn't hung up already on us, and you have actually heard him, welcome back to a friend of the show, Charlie Gallagher, who's here to join us as we talk about an absolute metric shit ton of new stuff in this quarter of a century episode. Yep, that's right, folks. This is our 25th episode of all time and this year. So, we're going to clap ourselves there.
Yeah, nice job, guys. Nice job. We've done all right. Oh, nice job, Neil. You've done most of the work.
And like I say, this is Charlie returning. It's actually you're our second guest returning for the second time. So it's the first person who's actually came back twice. So
I know. We didn't scare you away the first time, Charlie.
It wasn't sold to me like there was a choice. If I'd have known there was a choice, I don't know if it would be a different outcome or not.
It's
lovely to be here. It's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Or Neil just badger you for the next 3-4 months until you do.
This is the problem with Neil sitting so close to me on a daily basis. Of course, we work in a shared space, which we share together. Not just me and him, but he can be very persuasive. But no, thank you very much. I'm honoured to be asked back for the second time. It obviously means I wasn't too boring the first.
Well, I think the fact you sold David's jokes just the same as me, that guarantees you rights to come back whenever you want.
I know. Last time you said you liked them as well. I thought like I'd
polite.
had
It was his first time.
I suppose.
No, I stand by that. I wouldn't come on here if I didn't like the content. So you guys are doing good, and I see the growth is it's through the roof.
Yeah, I mean we in the last week or so we've actually just had our first interview, which is bizarre. Yeah, one of our friends over at Verbal Diorama emailed us and says, "Can we interview you guys about the podcast?" And we was like, "Of course you can." And that article went out the other week on online. So yeah, that was pretty cool. So if you want to read about where we became, I think it was we were British Film Podcast of the Week a few weeks ago. So yeah, that link is on our Twitter. So have a look and read the great article, basically celebrating how great we are. So again,
nice.
David, we're just waiting for the super yachts to roll in now, as we said. Still waiting on the first one.
No, my private jet's still on order. Just
back
still on order.
Yeah. Is that through Yodel? They tried to deliver it while you were out.
Yeah. Oh, Cheddar's gone. He started. He's gone. Can you hear him?
No.
Oh, okay, good. Okay.
For the and again, if you're listening to the pod, you may have seen on our Twitter feed. David has essentially got a small child, but a dog child called Cheddar.
Yeah.
That we have been ruthlessly exploiting for to make you listen to our podcast and for our Twitter account.
He's nothing but marketing material for us.
Exactly. I mean, there is a DeLorean dog bed that I see you can buy, and I'm just saying that should be the next thing you spend money on, other than heating or food. So anyway, on this week's episode, we're going to have non-spoiler reviews of Jason Reitman's new film Ghostbusters Afterlife. And me and David are going to delve into the Squid Game and Hellbound, two of Netflix's brilliant new South Korean shows. Myself and Charlie are going to talk Apple TV Plus's adaptation of Isaac Asimov's dense sci-fi epic Foundation, which has just wrapped its first season and already has season 2 confirmed. And fresh off the streams, we're going to take a look at Netflix's anime adaptation of Cowboy Bebop and Amazon's new epic fantasy series, The Wheel of Time. So is it the new Game of Thrones or the new Aragon? That was rhetorical, David. We're going to find out later. So, first up, a welcome back to our only returning guest so far, Mr. Charlie Gallagher. And I'd say, what have you been up to? But like we said, from working in the same building, it's obvious you've been writing your arse off every day. And you recently released your new book, Lethal Game, which is the second in the D.I. Joe Norris and D.S. Lucy Rose series. I would ask you about it, but as we know from the last time you were here, you were already on your next book in the series, ahead in planning. So where are you about now on them?
I'm 2 books away from that. It's always a strange thing because something goes out sort of 6-7 months after you sort of deliver it, if you like, maybe even longer on occasion. So and yeah, once I go on to the next, I mean, the way I write stories is to become totally engrossed and totally obsessed with them. So I forget everything else, including, you know, my home, my family, the way home, and anything I've written previously. So yeah, that's kind of where I am. I'm 2 more books away from that, if that makes sense, and halfway through.
Yeah.
But I do remember Lethal Game. I remember some of it. It's probably the fastest paced book I've written. It was one of those where I had an idea for an opening scene, which was 2 people tied up and forced to race to a point, and the winner gets to continue as part of the story, and the loser doesn't. If that makes sense.
Yes.
And from an incredibly quick opening, it just kind of that pace never dropped away. I don't plan or structure stories before I start. They're very much as they fall out of my face. So yeah, that one just stayed very, very quick the whole way through, and I was incredibly proud of the outcome, and the reviews have been really, really strong. So I was pleased with that one, very pleased.
Amazing.
Excellent. Yeah, no,
Sorry, Neil, you go.
No, go ahead, Dave, because I was about to say, your other half, she's quite a fan, isn't she?
Yeah, Natasha's a fan. I gave her Lethal Game for her birthday, and she was well chuffed with it. She had it. Charlie was nice enough to sign it for her and everything. And she's going to read that after she's finished Rivers of London, I think, which is what she's on at the moment. And then Lethal Game's going to be her next book. Charlie, how do you write so quickly? Like you've already finished the 3rd book then
Yes, yeah, the 3rd book's all done and dusted. And yeah, halfway through the one after that. Whether those 2 will continue to be part of that series or part of another series, we're not quite sure. I've since picked up an agent to work with me, and we're talking about different options and different things from sort of moving forward. But yeah, the story's done. So how do I write so quickly? I mean, I do it every day. That helps, and it's kind of my job now. So 5-6 hours a day writing stories. It soon adds up. And I'm full of shit, I think is the best way of putting it.
Because you have like yourself, who's already on his 4th book in this series, and then you compare it to somebody, I don't know, like George Martin or Patrick Rothfuss, who's like 10 years later, and we're still waiting for the next book in their series. I mean, you're pleasing I think fans. Getting them out.
Hopefully. I think I might have talked about it before, but I write crime thrillers, and my previous life was as a police officer, so a lot of the material comes quite natural to me. If there's a scene or a crime that I'm describing, then of course, arriving at a scene and the fast track actions and all that sort of stuff, I've done it a million times, so it's quite quick and easy for me to describe, if that makes sense. I'm not stopping for research or interviewing people that have done it, whereas the guys you mentioned there are the sort of the fantasy writers, and I mean they're creating whole worlds and whole cultures and languages and all sorts of in locations, and that's a long slog. I can't imagine. So I think maybe that's a big part of the difference. You can't churn them out at the sort of rate that 2 or 3 books a year that I tend to do with crime thrillers. But I mean, I'm prolific compared to other crime writers as well. I think it's just the way I'm wired, really. I get obsessed with stories and then crack on until it's finished. As long as Neil doesn't interrupt me, which is fairly regular. Normally moaning.
Yeah.
You're probably on like the 5th or 6th book by now, if it weren't for Neil.
Exactly. I think loss of earnings is a future lawsuit. I think.
Yeah. Anyway, I was going to say, like you have all these famous things where people read out bad tweets or bad comments. Well, there are no what I'd call bad reviews of your new book on Amazon, but I did have a little read through for some more of the interesting comments, and I found a couple here. I don't know if you've seen them or not, but first of all, this is a fan comment on Lethal Game that I just read the other day, and it says, "My enjoyment was marred through not having read the first book in the series, and I confess to not having a clue as to what was going on." Excellent. I mean, it's clearly obvious it's a second in the series, right?
It is, and another thing is that the opening, and we'll come on to when we talk about Foundation and probably Wheel of Time as well. I'll talk about this again, but the opening of a story, it is, of my story, Lethal Game is very confusing. It's all over the place. No one knows what's going on. That's kind of by design, and that's quite popular. You'll see that a lot with thrillers or action type stories, and that's kind of part of the hook, because you think, what is going on? Let's find out invest and crack on. But don't get me wrong, I'm not having a pop. I mean, these people are entitled to their opinion. Was that a bad review? Did it go on to be a couple of stars?
No, it got 4. They gave it 4 stars, but then they said my adrenaline was marred by having not read the first book, and I was just like, surely if you pick up a book, you must know it's in a series, right?
Yeah, I mean, I write them as standalones. They use the same characters, but it's a standalone story with its own beginning, middle, and end. But the characters do move over. So yeah, I don't think you lose much from not having read the first, but people do like a series, and I see this a lot. And if they don't pick up the first in the series, they can get frustrated if it's not advertised well enough. So that's probably more a frustration at the fact that I don't know if it's mentioned in the marketing bump, but I'll take that on the chin. That's fine. I mean, they're wrong, but I'll take it on the chin.
Yeah, obviously, yeah, 100%. And the next one it's not even really it's not even really like a negative or positive. It's not even really a review. It's just like the comment is, I would love to see an adult strategic board game launched in conjunction with this book. Board game ?
Oh, fantastic! Well, I mean, the premise of the story is that the two people I mentioned, two people racing against each other. The premise in the background is that it's a board game being played out in real life, so that the people are the characters of the game. So I think that's obviously the tie-in. And people have asked me, the game in the book is called Escape, and people have asked if it's a real game or if it can be, which is wonderful. I'd love that. What a tie-in and a marketing element that would be.
Believe you have a new agent now, so that could be something down the line. You get your own brand of board games. Forget about Netflix, forget about the movies. It's all about board games.
Yeah, well, maybe I should do a GoFundMe. I know of some other adult board games that have come.
That should definitely be a Kickstarter.
That's the word. Sorry, Kickstarter.
Do it.
Yeah,
do it. That's amazing. There's nothing but board games on Kickstarters, and
they're amazing.
Sounds like an awesome board game.
I played.
That could be the next Cones of Dunshire.
I don't know what that is.
It's a game, right? In Parks and Recreation, one of the guys, when he lost his job, he made a fantasy board game called Cones of Dunshire that had stupidly complex rules as like a joke and a play on those type of games. And then because of the show, it actually became a real board game that you can now buy because people love the idea of it so much.
Oh, well, there you are. I mean, there's a precedent already. This is right in itself, isn't it? Let's get this done.
Okay, brilliantly. And
we needed Rhodes tie-in as well.
Yep, there we go.
We could be one of the victims.
I mean, someone called David's definitely going to get killed for not doing research at some point.
I would love to get killed in one of your books. Just don't tell me how it's going to happen. Let it be a surprise.
Yeah, see, people say this a lot, which is always a lovely conversation. How would you like to die if you had a choice?
I don't want to know. I want it to be a surprise. I want it to come at me. Make it. I don't know. I want to be creative with it. I don't want to just get shot or stabbed. I want to have I don't know, maybe suffocated on my own. I don't know. Make it dark.
Okay. Okay. Mainly because I know your other half reads them. I'll enjoy that.
Killing off slowly, just drip, little pin pricks or something. Bleed him to death slowly.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry.
Right, I think that's more about your personal life than we needed to know there, David. And so rounding off here, finally, you can get Lethal Game for only 99p currently on the Kindle. So, I mean, come on, you really have no excuse, do you? So, get it now. Now, on to what we've been watching. And first up, I've got a brief non-spoiler review for one of my most anticipated films of the year, which is Jason Reitman's Ghostbusters Afterlife. Now, it's no secret that Reitman Sr.'s 1984 film is one of my all-time favourite films, and we even used to pretend to be Ghostbusters at school. The sequel in '89 was perfectly fine, but we never got a Ghostbusters 3 for a variety of reasons, one of the key ones being that Howard Ramis Egon and Bill Murray fell out when they were working on Groundhog Day that Ramis was directing. Now, they didn't speak for years and years, and it was only when Ramis became seriously ill near the end of his life that him and Murray buried the hatchet shortly before he passed. And at that point, it really seemed like we'd never see the original Ghostbusters ever back on screen again. And, I mean, in 2016, we had the widely divisive Ghostbusters Answer the Call, which was the all-female reboot directed by Paul Feig. And that failed, not because it had 4 women instead of men. It failed because the script wasn't very good, and it felt like the studio and Feig himself didn't know whether this was a reboot or a sequel. And again, my biggest bugbear with that film was that we had all the surviving cast appear in the film, but as new characters and little more than extended cameos. So, after 2016, it really did seem like the Ghostbusters franchise was about to pass into the afterlife itself. Until Jason Reitman, son of the original director Ivan, pitched a new Ghostbusters project that Sony went for, which brings us to Afterlife. Now, the plot sees us follow young Phoebe, a scene-stealing McKenna Grace, and her brother Trevor, not the greatest name, which is Stranger Things' Finn Wolfhard, and they move into their granddad's abandoned creepy farmhouse in the middle of nowhere town of Somervale, with the hard-up mother, Callie, played brilliantly sarcastic by the always great Carrie Coon. And as we quickly learn, Phoebe's grandfather was none other than the OG Nerdbuster himself, Egon Spengler. And what follows is 100% fan service and pure nostalgia in the best possible way. When the film ends, there's a title card that simply says "For Harold," and that's exactly what this film is. It's a loving, well-intentioned tribute to Harold Ramis. I mean, I absolutely love this film and thought the new cast largely held their own, again, for most of the running time. Paul Rudd does his usual Ruddness and gives a nice slacker summer school teacher vibe, and you can't do a podcast without mentioning another highlight of the film, young Logan Kim in his first acting role, playing a character who is actually called Podcast. And one of our friends on Twitter did say he feels like a lost Goonie, and he strikes up a brilliant friendship with Phoebe as the film progresses. So, I mean, I love it, but there are pros and cons to it. So I would say the pros, the cast are almost all excellent. It is the Force Awakens of Ghostbusters, in that it does recycle key parts of the original film to present it in a new way for a new audience, which is perfectly fine. And it is a smaller, more indie family drama at its heart than you think of the kind of the big action, comedy, sci-fi blockbuster that the original was. You know, you have Egon's family wondering why he left them and they never heard from him again. It's got excellent use of the musical cues from the original, and it has 2 post-credit scenes. One that is a typical funny throwaway scene, and another that definitely points the franchise in a hopeful new direction. Cons. Well, Finn Wolfhard's character Trevor is a little bit bland, as is his potential love interest, a girl called, and this is actually a character name they come up with, which is horrific, Lucky Domingo. Seriously, that's the name they went with for a character.
Lucky Domingo.
Yes, Lucky Domingo. I thought I was at the actress's name, then I looked and went, oh no, it's a character name.
Domingo?
And why?
Isn't that like a currency?
Yeah.
A Domingo?
I think you're thinking of the Dominican Republic there, David.
You know what I was thinking
country.
of? I was thinking of Dingo Dollars from I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Sorry.
You've just sullied the podcast with reality.
Anyway, continue.
Yeah. So it and I think probably a con for some people is it is the Force Awakens of Ghostbusters. So it does go back to a lot of the original film. And one of the complaints is quite valid. There isn't actually enough ghostbusting, and it's not as much of a comedy as the original. And yeah, I mean, it isn't actually that scary in places, whereas the original, when I was a kid, scared the living piss out of me. And overall, your mileage on this film will vary on how much you're a fan of the original Ghostbusters. For all the crying and moaning by some of the negative reviews of this saying it wipes out the existence of the 2016 film, which essentially gives into all the toxic and misogynistic behaviour around that film and the casting of the 4 women, I say to that, well, the lead in this film is a young girl who is easily the best new character brought into the franchise, and I'm sure that the majority of the fans can't wait to see in another film. If you're a big fan of the original, then yes, this is fan service, but lovingly so, and Phoebe goes on this great journey of discovering all the classic icons and iconography from the original film and learning the history of how great the original Ghostbusters really were. And like I say, I think some of the complaints that have the most validity is that the original was a big summer blockbuster action supernatural comedy. This is a much smaller, intimate family story, and it has a bit more of a somber tone throughout as it pays reverence to Ramis. And yes, it's not as funny as the original, but I would say it has much more heart than the original. So if you're a fan of Ghostbusters, and the over 100 likes on my tweet about the film in the other week is anything to go by, then really what is wrong with giving fan service in a franchise when it's done from a really big-hearted place like this film did?
Lovely. Nice. Okay.
But basically go and see it, David.
So what was your Nils out of 10? How many Nils did you give it out of 10?
I'm torn between 8 and 9. It's not a perfect film by any stretch of the imagination, but it's you forgive some of the film's flaws because you know it's coming from a well-intentioned place. And just like you say, knowing the backstory behind that Ramis and Bill Murray didn't get on for years because they had a big falling out, and then only on his deathbed they buried the hatchet, and that Murray coming back for as you know, it's not really a spoiler that we know the original cast come back in the film, but it's not their film. It is the new cast's film, and the new cast are really good, and I think they nail it. Where there's all these other complaints that they're trying to YA and make it all like about teenagers, and it's going to be like Stranger Things, Ghostbusters. That's the furthest thing from the truth. I think the new two new adult characters in it, Carrie Coon and Paul Rudd, play their roles brilliantly, and the kids, like I say, McKenna Grace, she's only 15 and she absolutely steals this movie. She's so good in it. So yeah, I'm really like.
I was going to say, these films were very much sort of a part of my childhood, and I think a lot of us would say the same. And I think it was because of the sort of feeling that was around them. It's difficult to describe it, these 80s movies. They had a sort of it was like watching your mates mess around on screen. Do you know what I mean? That sort of feeling to it. And I think obviously I've got two children now that are sort of 8 and 10, so this is going to be right in the middle of their childhood. Does it still have that same feeling? I don't know how better to describe it.
I think if you're a kid today and you watch this, you will enjoy it because of the kid characters. Yeah, I think you will identify with them because obviously, we don't identify with the kids characters now because we're old people. Well, except David. Yeah. But you're pushing 30, David. So I'll just say you're pushing 30. But yeah, I think if you're like a kid these days, like you say, having a character called Podcast who walks around with a microphone recording everything for his podcast all the time is just brilliant. Yeah. I mean, for a debut performance by this young actor, Logan Kim, he's so good again, and never heard of the kid before. And I think casting-wise, if you wanted to cast a young female version of the Egon character in the modern day, you couldn't have done any better. She's got all his like vocal mannerisms down. The bit where she'll turn and say something really creepily. There's a bit in the trailer where like they say, "Well, what do you think's going on?" And she just slowly does that slow head turn and goes, "Well, maybe it's the apocalypse." Like completely deadpans it, and there's loads of stuff like that in there. And what I like I say, for all the people who moaned that they're raising the one with the women and it's giving all the people who were like really misogynistic about the last one what they want. Well, the lead's a girl still. It's a young girl, and she's brilliant. She's the best thing in it. So I really hope that again they're going to carry on the franchise now with these new characters. And this is like the kind of the send off and the passing of the torch from the original cast to the new cast, and it's a good film. It's made a lot of money, so Sony have even set up their Ghost Corps company now, which is essentially a company literally just designed to find ways of milking more out of the franchise of the Ghostbusters. So I can't wait to see.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing though?
Well, it's both, right? I mean, if you're a fan of it, you want to see it more. You want to see more of it, but obviously you want it done by the right team. So I think if Reitman's involved, having that link to the original Ghostbusters, that was his dad's biggest hit.
Yeah.
As long as I think Reitman's involved, you've got the producers connected with the original, then as long as you maintain that through line from the original team. And I think that's where they went wrong with the 2016 one. They didn't have that link. They brought in the original characters for some cameos. And I mean, I could talk for hours about the 2016 one. I think we will one day, David. We'll do like a special.
It before,
Yeah, I had that similar rant.
Different pod.
Maybe you guys could do a sort of the biggest misses, if you like. The biggest opportunities that the film industry didn't take, and I think that would go in that category. Would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I always feel like with that film, I don't blame the director. Obviously, takes something. Someone to blame, Paul Feig. I feel like he wasn't allowed to do what he fully wanted to do. I mean, at that point, he was coming off Spy, which I thought was his funniest film. I love Spy. I think it's Melissa McCarthy's best film. It's Statham. It's one of Statham's best film where he completely sends up his tough guy routine, and it's genuinely funny. So coming off that, he went to Ghostbusters like, right, this is going to be really funny, and it is objectively a funny film. But the problem with it is, the studio and the director themselves don't know whether it's a sequel or a reboot, and it sits in this weird kind of place between the two of them. If they'd done a better job, they could have tied it into the new one, and they could have tied it into the old ones, but they didn't. So we'll see where we go with that. But right up next, we are going to talk, and David, I know you're going to have big opinions on this. It is the Wheel of Time. So, do you want to set it up for us there, David?
This is your spoiler alert.
Yeah, so we've currently got 5 episodes of The Wheel of Time that's out. Amazon released 3 of them on release day. And then 2... I haven't watched the one that came out last night. But we've watched 4 episodes so far, correct? Charlie, have you watched The Wheel of Time yet?
I've watched the opening episode. I've watched the first one.
Okay.
Yes.
So, yeah. Based on Robert Jordan's books, I've spoken previously about The Wheel of Time in podcasts before, but It is a Chosen One story arc where we're following the Emmonsfield Five as they are being chased by the Dark One, as one of them is the Dragon Reborn. And it's out of all 5, including the female characters, which is a change from the books. I don't necessarily think a negative one. But it's interesting to see how some of the show's changes from the books, both positively and negatively, have gone down with the fandom.
Just to pull you up on that point there, right? I already have an issue with, you said the Dragon Reborn, right? But the whole idea is the Dragon Reborn is going to be a man who can channel, what's it called, Cider?
What Cider? Yeah, Saidin and Cider, yeah.
Cider, yeah. Right. So, by that definition, a woman shouldn't be able to, because women can already control it.
I think...
Therefore, trying to suggest that the 2 girls could be the dragon doesn't make any sense, because surely it has to be a bloke.
Right, so what I think they've done, which I'm not 100% sure with because I need to watch more of it to confirm it, but I think what they've done is they've separated. So how the one power was channeled before, you had the male half and you had the female half, side in, side out. The two couldn't touch each other, and the male's half was always tainted, which is why the man was a dragon, which is why the man was going to be the Dragon Reborn, and why the Dragon Reborn was destined to go mad. Because the Dark Ones tainted it. But the difference, I think what the show's doing is they've cut that out altogether, and they're just having it as one power.
Okay.
One power that one person can control more of than anybody else, which is the dragon.
That doesn't work going forward, because obviously the whole thing is about
there's going to be
having the power.
Yeah, if it is that they go with, there's going to be issues going forwards. But so far, I'm with the show as a whole, I'm very much on the fence. I'm a bit disappointed, if I'm completely honest, with how it's gone so far. As I mentioned from the trailers, everything just seems too bright. It's obviously a stylistic choice that the showrunners gone with. Rafe Judkins, the showrunner, has decided to go with this choice of having everything be very fantastical in its appearance. But for me, it just scratches away that immersive layer for me. I'd rather have it be more gritty, because you go from that, and then you go from someone being stabbed in the neck, or some of the horrific stuff that you see that the Trollocs do, and it's like night and day. It doesn't mold well for me, and it just takes away some of the immersion. Some of the casting as well has been a bit iffy for me, to say.
Rand's a bit bland, isn't he?
Rand, but he is bland as a character. He's playing Rand the character, so I don't really know if that's a problem with the actor himself. I think it's more of because
Source
Rand's
material.
a character that gets more deeper, more nuanced the further you go into the story. He becomes really complicated. But at the beginning, he's like Harry Potter. You can project yourself onto him. That's the whole point of him. And he's very much just like, he's like, I saw on, I think, Reddit, people were comparing him to Anakin Skywalker, Hayden Christensen in the Star Wars films, and I was just like, that's pretty bang on. He's Hayden Christensen.
Yeah.
There's some, so it's not wholly perfect at the moment, but it's still a really fun and enjoyable fantasy series. Is it going to be as popular as Game of Thrones was at its height? I think it can be, but it's going to be a different audience. That's not going to. No, I think it can be. It's already like the number one streamed show at the moment, but it's not going to reach that same almost cult, like hardcore following that Game of Thrones had, which is, I think, the easiest show to compare it with.
But I mean, I think Game of Thrones grabbed you from the first episode. It ends with Bran being pushed out the window. You have that opening with the White Walkers.
I was going to say, in relation to Game of Thrones, from my point of view, as not a big fan of the fantasy genre in general, I loved Game of Thrones because, like you say about it grabbing you from the first episode, it really did. But also, there wasn't really many fantasy elements in Game of Thrones to start with. So I was kind of already locked in by the time they introduced dragons and magic and dragonfire and all the rest. And it was quite a natural progression and obviously stuck with it. With Wheel of Time, the fantasy elements are there right from the off. So you might lose those people that that think, this isn't for me, rightly or wrongly. As it happened, I quite enjoyed the opening episode. There was a lot going on, and I'm very confused, having not, again, from a point of view of someone who hasn't read the books. But if you're going to be as big as Game of Thrones, you need to appeal to a far broader audience, and that is people that haven't read it, that aren't necessarily fans of that genre, but having a look. And I wonder if that will be one of the stumbling blocks, just because it's very confusing. There's a lot of characters introduced very, very quickly, a lot of situations, different locations. Again, I talked earlier about having a confusing start is absolutely fine, and is actually a mechanics of writing a story and very popular and a decent way to start. But there does have to be some sort of payback for that, and it has to be quite quick. You have to get hold of someone or a storyline that you can take hold of. And after that first episode, I didn't really have that. That's after one episode though, so that's not really that fair.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Game of Thrones started off as like a drama, medieval drama with political intrigue and lots of shagging and violence, and then it slowly brought. It's like you said, my parents never would have watched it if I told them, oh, it's about dragons and ice zombies, but it's got Sean Bean in it, and it's kind of a medieval, action drama. It's got, and like you say, it appealed to a broad base of people. And again, having the fantasy really front loaded in Wheel of Time. I mean, it starts with a VO by Rosamund Pike's character Moran, literally explaining the rules of the universe and the story. Game of Thrones didn't. Game of Thrones just straight in, wasn't it? And for me, it feels very meh so far. Kind of really standard fantasy 101. I mean, I'm just looking at my pros and cons here, David, and I think visually the Trollocs looked, bollocks.
You think they look? You don't think they look good? The Trollocs?
No,
I thought they looked good.
No, the Trollocs, mate. I think they were one of the best things that they've done. With that, you can see a lot of the budget has gone into the look of the Trollocs, and it's one of the best things that the show's done. Is visualise what the Trollocs are actually like. 100%. A massive disagree with you on that one.
Well, that's okay. You can. I just think they look like rubbish orcs, and I didn't like the way it was filmed. The attack. The one thing I did like about the attack in the first one was you got that sense of, it's like the Terminator. They're going to keep coming from. They're going to keep coming from. But again, we saw that in Lord of the Rings, didn't we? With the hobbits took out on the thing. So it's not original. Eye
of the World, the first book in the Wheel of Time, it treads the very similar path to the Lord of the Rings does. You can see the heavily influence, but the story then devolves and evolves into its own thing later on in the story. But Eye of the World is very similar to the beginning of Lord of the Rings.
I mean, Rosamund Pike's like the big name they've cast for it, and clearly she's enjoying it that much that she spends, I think, was it 2 or 3 episodes asleep so far after the big fight. So, I'm gonna save everyone with a bit of magic, and I'm gonna sleep for 2-3 episodes. So she's clearly making the money there. And one of the changes you mentioned, well, actually you did mention it, but one of the changes was, why did they give Perrin a wife and then have him accidentally kill her? I mean, they fridged it. His character motivation is, I killed my wife. That you didn't need that in the first one. I mean, Perrin for me is the worst. Rand's bland. Perrin is terrible.
With the characters, so sorry to interrupt you. With the character introductions of both Perrin's wife and Matt's 2 little girls, I think it's to give all of the characters.
But they're his sisters, though, aren't they?
Yeah, sisters. Yeah. They're all to give those characters, who are more fringe characters in the book at the very beginning, something to lose whilst they're there. They have something to fight for, but I do agree with you that I think that the relationship between the two of them wasn't established well enough for you to care about the fact that this character was losing this person. I think if the Emmonsfield, the Trollocs attacking Emmonsfield happened in maybe episode 2, and you had a full episode of actually establishing who these characters are, what they're doing, then maybe that would have been a better way of having that character be there and then kill them off. Like Charlie said, the pace of the show is also important, and if that happened, then the pacing would have been way slower, and it probably would have lost people in episode 1. So they were juggling with sort of.
Yeah, and I get that, but I would have liked to have said it. It's like the 3 central guys. They're like, you didn't really get enough of them, and you had one scene of them in a pub, and that was basically it. And it's like you had I might be remembering wrongly, but you had a lot more of it in the books, establishing their relationship and how they're really good mates, and establishing what their character traits were and all that kind of stuff. Like I said, I think Rand is very bland, but we've gone through that. Perrin at the minute is just terrible. He's just mopey McMoperson. But Matt is the best character out of the three of them so far.
Yeah,
And
well, he's the best character
like,
in the book as well, isn't he? He's the most charismatic, he's fan favourite.
And like you said, this is going to be a problem going forward because they've recast the guy, the actor.
Recast him, yeah.
Already.
It's not a great start. You can't, recasting a main character is a big...
Whilst you're talking about cast as well, I did notice that there was a guy from quite a prominent cast member, was also Game of Thrones, and he was Ramsay Bolton in Game of Thrones. And again, from my point of view as a layman looking in, making comparisons with Game of Thrones, that's I don't know if that will hinder the show moving forward. The fact that you're going, oh, that's Ramsay Bolton from that other show that was really good. Might hinder.
Yeah.
Ramsay Bolton in Game of...
Yeah.
Who was playing him in Wheel of Time?
Michael Hatton is the actor. What was the character? Was it Tam
L4, the dad. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Was it Ramsay Bolton? He was the Lord Bolton.
It was
anyway.
Roose Bolton.
Oh, okay, fine.
Was
Yes, Ramsay was the son, of course, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was in it.
He was a cock chopper's dad, wasn't he? That was it.
Yes. Yeah, what a great way to describe him. But and he'll have to be forever remembered as that. But I mean, just again from a layman, from someone who watched the whole of Game of Thrones and enjoyed it, then the comparisons are inevitable. And I wonder if they wanted... They're obviously not trying to avoid that, but I wonder if they should almost to an extent. I guess they're not going to be able to. But casting someone from Game of Thrones is pretty direct, isn't it?
They need to establish a new audience, one that is both relevant to this relevant to Game of Thrones, and bring in new people that are more fantasy heavy, like you said, because Game of Thrones is very character driven, whereas the Wheel of Time hasn't got that same character. They're not as strong. They're not as grey. Wheel of Time's slightly more black and white. You still do have grey characters, but that's a problem. And another thing that Game of Thrones did a lot better, I think, straight from the off, is establishing world building. Because what was a masterstroke from Game of Thrones is having the title sequence as the map, so you can establish where these characters are to the map at the very beginning of the show.
And in relation to each other.
The Wheel of Time, you've got no idea where they are, where they're going, how far away these distances are, aside from just showing you. You don't have like a visible map that we've seen or that you can reference to show that. And I think having that in a fantasy world is quite important for its world building.
And I will agree with you on one thing as well, David. It looks too clean, doesn't it? It doesn't have that grit and lived-in feeling of the settings that Game of Thrones and even The Witcher has. I mean, The Witcher, that feels like you can tell they're like in the mud and the cold and the wet out in Eastern Europe somewhere when they're filming that. You can feel it. You can feel it as you're watching it. It's got that thing to it. But I think although we've been a bit down on it, David, obviously you're going to continue with it and watch all of them, aren't you, until it either completes the story or gets cancelled. I think it's leaning towards probably getting cancelled at the minute.
Well, season 2 is already up and filming.
With the Lord of the Rings show coming out next year, I don't think Amazon's going to push. And this goes back to what we said on the very first podcast we did. Why are they making both at the same time? I don't think the audience is big enough and people don't have enough time to watch two. If there's 2 epic fantasy shows on, most people are going to watch Lord of the Rings and not the one they've never heard of.
Doesn't Game of Thrones come back as well?
Yeah, House of the Dragon.
Yeah, so that's that's sort of February, March time, is it? I'm not entirely sure.
Sometime February, House of the Dragon. With Game of Thrones, they were working from the books and it had that very slow pace. And if anything, I think the pace on Wheel of Time needed to be a bit slower.
That's what I said. That's what I was meant. Yeah, that's what I mentioned with the first episode. I agree. I think the pacings are slightly too quick for my personal liking.
Because you don't have time to establish the relationship between the characters and the locations, like you said, and you just don't care if you don't care about the characters, then you're not going to care about the show. And I'm struggling to really keep my. Having said that though, from some other podcasts I listen to with critics who get paid and get screeners, some people who've seen the whole season, they've said it does actually pick up and it gets better and better each episode. And you and me have seen the first 4 now, right, David? So 5 was out last night, and I thought 3 was the best one so far, purely because it slowed down. You had a couple of the characters. You had Rand and Matt at an inn, and you got a bit of character. And there was a really great twist in that. I won't give that away to spoil for Charlie, but there was some really good. And because it took a moment to breathe, and he's like, okay, I'm starting to like these characters now.
Yeah, 100%. And the performance levels in the actors as well, you could feel like they were elevated when Oh my god, I've forgotten the character's name. Ah, no. Tom
Merrilin.
Tom Merrilin. When he's getting introduced, you could tell he like elevates everyone around him, and
he was the best. He was like the best guy in the scene, isn't it? It's like you had a bunch of brand new drama recruits on the screen, and then you drop Ian McKellen in. It was kind of like that thing, like, oh shit, this guy can act. Yeah. There's a new character. New character comes in at the end of episode 3. Charlie, called Tom Merrilin, and he's just awesome. Like, or immediately was like, this guy is my, and hopefully that will get more people watching it. But of course, as in at the end of that episode as well, you get the introduction of Logain as well. So, and again, so far he's not bad. So far he's kind of what I start when I was watching his scenes. I was like, oh yeah, I remember this from Look. Oh yeah, I know where this is going.
Yeah. What I like that they've done with Logain and how they've handled him is how they've shown the power differences in what Aes Sedai and what the Dragon Reborn is capable of. How they've handled that sort of power dynamic, because it's something that you can't really visualize properly. So they've had to do it through the script or through just other means of showing the power shift in two people. So you've got the Dragon Reborn that's obvious now, that's established, because through Logain as freaking insanely powerful compared to Moraine, for instance, who we've already seen be fucking badass in the first episode,
and then napped for the next 2.
Yes, and then she had a little sleep.
I can honestly see Pike going, look, I'm going to talk this bollocks for 1 or 2 episodes, then I'm not going to do anything for these 3. Because I want to go here and do this, and then I'll come back in this one.
Yeah, she had absolutely no influence in what her character done, but I agree.
But anyway, I think that about rounds us off in Wheel of Time. So we'll finish with Charlie. Are you going to keep watching this show though? Has it gained your attention enough to keep with it?
Yes, I think I will. I certainly enjoyed the first episode. It did have a few issues with it. It all felt very complicated and very confusing. But like I said, the opening episode, that's fine as long as it starts coming together. I'll stick with it for sure. It's good fun.
Okay, yeah, same here. I think it's not high on my list of stuff to watch in a week at the minute, but I again, having read the books, so I think I was up to about the 6th or 7th book. I will stick with it because I feel that as other reviews have said, as it goes on, it gets better and better and better, and so therefore, hopefully, the second season that they're making right now is actually going to be what we really want the show to be. And hopefully it finds its audience, and hopefully it keeps its audience.
Yeah,
because it's going to have a very, very, very filled battleground against a lot of other fantasy shows next year to compete against.
Yeah, 4 episodes in, and I'm about 6 Davids out of 10 on it.
I would agree with 6 Davids as well. Okay, so moving on, we are now on to one show that everyone's talked about and we haven't at all, because we've only just caught up on it ourselves, which is the big international hit from South Korea, Squid Game. And there are going to be spoilers for Squid Game here, so if you haven't seen it yet, please don't listen.
Warning, people. Spoilers ahead.
I think the world had seen it whilst we just hadn't. Literally, who hasn't seen Squid Game at this point in the world? Isn't it the most watched thing Netflix have ever done?
Yes, it is.
Is this the bad time to admit that I haven't seen any of it, unfortunately?
You've not seen... Oh!
No,
we're going to
I
spoil it for
no.
you then. Okay.
I don't mind. You can spoil it. It's one of them things that I'm sure I will watch at some point, but it's not anywhere near my list of things to watch. It just doesn't appeal. Of course, I'm going to sit and listen to you good people, and maybe by the end of this podcast, I'll have it on tonight. But as it stands, it doesn't appeal to me at all, and I'm clearly wrong.
Maybe we shouldn't spoil it, because Squid Game is very much centered on the battle royale element of it. Who's going to win? Who's going to die? If that's spoiled for you, then
I don't think so, because I think if, like I say, as Charlie hasn't really got much interest in watching the show, I think telling them about it and the ins and outs and how it goes might actually make him want to watch it. So
yeah, absolutely. Everyone else has seen it, so don't worry about me. Go ahead. I think you need to spoil it.
Okay.
Give it up for South Korea, man. I mean, there's always been great South Korean cinema, such as the work of Park Chan-wook, with his films such as Old Boy and Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. And he'd go on to actually produce Bong Joon-ho's Oscar smash Parasite. I mean, Parasite won Best Film a couple of years ago. You can't forget the excellent Train to Busan by Sang Ho-yeon. More on him later. And there have always been great South Korean films out there. And now with Squid Game, they are taking over the streaming TV landscape as well. So, at its most basic level, Squid Game is the bastard offspring of Battle Royale and The Running Man, where a group of around 400 poor people, saddled with crippling debts and really shit lives, find themselves playing children's games for vast sums of money, but if they lose, as they shockingly find out after the first game, if you lose, you die. Now, for me, the biggest twist at the start of this show was at the end of the first episode, when you find out there's a group vote, and if enough people vote to leave after the first mass slaughter, they could leave if there was a majority vote. I honestly thought going in, the show was going to be, these people get stuck in the game, and then each episode it's another game, and it's them trying to escape. But what this show did, by giving them the option to leave the game, I was like, what? Where's the show go from this? And then what episode 2 brilliantly does, it then goes back to the characters you saw survive from the first episode, and they voluntarily come back knowing they're going to face death. I mean, that was a genius twist, and it really hammered home for me how pitiful the lives of the characters are, that they'd risk death for the chance to improve their lives, and even knowing the stakes now, they're still going to go back for it for the money. I mean, I thought that was brilliant. What about you, David?
Yeah, I agree. I think, it was a smart way of making the characters' lives just be so decrepit. That, like, is decrepit the right word? I don't know, I'm running with it. And dealing with the idea that, losing that fight to get out, they're all willingly there and participating because the reward for them, the hope of a better life in Korea, or to potentially even leave Korea, because some of the political and economical stuff, elements that the show hit, dying was a better option, and the hope of winning was a better option than living and remaining on the course that they're going through. It's quite sad, really. It's quite a sad show.
Well, you find that quite a lot of South Korean cinema is based around. I mean, it's without the ultra violence, although there's a little bit of it. That's very similar to Parasite. It was about the poor family, working with a rich family. Snowpiercer, which was Bong Joon-ho, I know it was an American film, but it was made by a South Korean director. And again, it was all about the poor people at the back of the train fighting up to the upper class people at the top of the train. So, it must be a really big thing in South Korean society, this dichotomy between the rich and the poor. So our main character is Seong Ji-hun, and he's a chauffeur with a gambling problem who can't support his daughter, and she's got a better life with his ex-wife and her new fella. And, he's that much of a scumbag, he steals money off his store worker mother. It's only when he finds out his mother is seriously ill, though, that he decides he has to go back in the game. Now, I mean, we could go through all the characters, but we haven't got enough time, and I don't really want to. So, David, for me, the standout episode is got to be episode 6, Gabanyu.
The marbles. Is that when they're playing marbles?
The marbles episode, yeah.
Yeah. That's that's handout. Yeah, stat. Yeah.
But
definitely.
did you think? Wait a minute, this is a bad idea, because right at the very start of the game, they're all like, "Quick, you're going to be competing in pairs." So everyone's like, they pair up with people who they've come to like and are their friends, and I was like, that's a terrible idea, because surely whoever loses is going to die. And I saw, right.
Yeah, but you don't know what the game is. That's like half of the game is played before the game actually happens, where they're like, here's this bit, you've got to choose your number, and stuff like that. So half the game's chosen.
I saw that
before.
coming from the start of the episode. Like, wait, whoever, because that's going to clear the cast out of like half of your favourite characters, and by the end of that episode, you really have thinned them down. I mean, what is really good is you see that like Ji-hun, our main character, he gets paired with player 1, who's like an old man who's kind of got a bit of dementia, and he's kind of helped him through the earlier games, and he's trying to be fair. But then when the old man keeps winning, he literally uses the guy's dementia against him to cheat to win. And you see many of the other characters also cheating and lying their way to get to the next game. So even like, and they're not all arseholes. I mean, you've got your one gangster guy who's a complete arsehole, but the main characters, they're all kind of, they don't want to cheat. I mean, Ji-hun definitely doesn't want to, and he's trying to give the old fellow a chance. But eventually, he's like, well, it's my life or his. He's an old fellow with a terminal, brain cancer, I think it is. I'm going to have to cheat to lie. Whereas his friend blatantly fucks over the other guy, and he's just like, wow, You do have a side story.
With the guy that was literally, it was so obvious that this guy was going to die at some point because he was the most lovable character. You can't have someone so lovable and he's like, it was so obvious he was going to die, and it was going to be heartbreaking when it happened. And and it happened. And it's the gentleman from, was he from Pakistan or was he from India, living in Korea for a better life?
Pakistan. Yeah, I think he's a Pakistani gentleman. Yeah, he was.
His name was Ali, the character. Even his casting, you just wanted to smush his face because he was so beautiful and lovable. Like he had like little chubby cheeks and stuff, just everything.
He's not a hamster, man. Jesus.
Yeah, but he was just as cute as one. Just as cute as a little hamster with his little pouches full, and you just wanted to he was so lovely. And then obviously they're going to kill him off.
So, as someone who hasn't seen it, apologies if you mentioned it already. What's the incentive? What obviously these people are facing losing their life for playing this game.
It's about £23 million, so it's like about
the world had to Google what the incentive was. I think because it was in Korean money, so I think everyone went on Google.
That's interesting that at the start you talked about how it's so dire in the place that it's set in Korea that's why they volunteered to come back. I think that's a reflection on society as a whole, don't you think? I think if they did that in the UK, I think there'd be volunteers.
Yeah, 100%.
Interesting social experiment by the sounds of it.
As I said, there's a lot of other South Korean cinema and TV shows out there, and that whole class warfare system thing in it really got. I mean, if you guys haven't seen Parasite yet, go and see Parasite. I think it's on Amazon Prime. It's still at the minute. That's just an amazing film. I mean, the fact that a South Korean film won the best film Oscar a couple of years ago, it shows you how good it was. And again, but class, that's the whole root of that film there, where you have the poor family who start working for the rich family in the whole dichotomy of who is actually the parasite. Is it the rich people because on taking all the money so they put the poor people in that position, or is it the poor people who are like trying to steal off the rich people? So it's it's very clever when you're watching that film. What I would say is this episode 6 is definitely the standout, but you do have you've got a side story going on with a police officer who infiltrates the workforce of the game. So in the game, there is all these staff with masks on who are like, running the game for the game makers. Yeah,
the staff look like little PlayStation controllers. They've got like circles and X's and stuff and triangles.
And again, that gave the show a kind of another level, because if it was just all the game all the time, I think it wouldn't have worked so well. But when you have these scenes of the police officer who's trying to who's infiltrated the game, and he's looking for his missing brother, and I mean, this is the big spoiler, and again, I don't think this really works, which is why I want to talk about it, is that in the penultimate episode, we find out that the man running the game, who has a different mask, who's called the front man, is actually the cop's brother. And then they have this big confrontation, and the cop falls off a cliff. So I guess that's him gone.
Yeah, but he's just He's just fallen into season 2. That's where he's gone. He's fallen off that cliff straight into season 2.
Okay. Well, so let's quickly get to the end. So as expected in the finale, Ji-hun, our main character, is the winner, but it is not a happy ending by any stretch. He goes home and he finds his mother, who he'd gone back to get a thing, has died in the meantime, and he doesn't touch his prize money for a year. Until he goes and gives it to one of the younger brothers of one of the competitors that he was friends with. And right in the last one, I love this, was that we find that the old man in a Gabanu episode is actually called U Il Nam, and he's not actually dead, though he is dying still. But he created the game out of sheer boredom for entertainment for himself and the other ultra-rich in the society. And it's funny because there's one episode where they go, oh, we're bringing in the VIPs, and it's just these really shithouse Americans.
The VIPs literally almost single-handedly ruined the show.
They were not good, were they? They were...
Like, performance levels went from being like 9s and 10s across the board from all the cast to when the VIPs turned up, so the American actors or wherever, it went to like a 2. It went really, like, the quality just dropped.
And here's the funny thing, Charlie. They're all wearing masks, but their performances are that bad that even with them not being able to see their face and them emoting, they're fucking terrible. And I mean, I suppose it's just the filmmakers having a crack at America as well, in a way, isn't it? They're like this rich scum that come in and they're just there for the entertainment. Yeah, I mean, a bit too much time was spent on them in the later episodes, and again, it didn't really go anywhere.
Yeah, I got some proper Hostel vibes when the VIPs turned up.
Yeah, but it didn't go that gory, did it? So it didn't go full torture porn.
No, but like rich people paying to entertain themselves by killing poor people. Like you say, a reflection on society, deconstructing societal trope, like, yeah, all that.
As a lot of people said, with Squid Game, what it was when it first came out, it was essentially, a lot of people thought it was just going to be the classic Japanese film, Battle Royale, but over 9 episodes instead of 2 hours. And it is to a point, but I think they've added more to it to give it a lot more than it appears on paper. The show ends, the finale of the last episode is Ji-hun on her way to LA to visit his daughter. And on the way there, he sees the man who originally snared him into the game a year ago trying to do the same to someone else. And he gets the man's card and he rings the number. So I was thinking, is he going into the game again? And the voice on the other end of the line tells him, look, take the money and get on the plane. But Ji-hun, he's looking a bit... Because it's funny, because he's kind of goofy looking, isn't he? He's kind of like a goofy looking, like...
With his red hair, his dyed red hair.
Now he's gone... No, this is before he dyed his red hair. I said when he started off, he's kind of like goofy looking, and now he looks like he's gone full John Wick by the end of it. So I reckon that's what they're going to do, don't they? Like, and then, he's told to get on the plane, and he just turns around and walks straight to the camera, and I was like, okay, they're going to go full-on old boy on Team Squid Game in the next series. So, so there's quite a few theories about Season 2, David, that I've been reading up on. And one is that the plane he was supposed to get on was actually set to explode, because even though he won the game, he wasn't following the rules by not spending the money, and the game masters were worried that he'd expose them. We also found out earlier on, I forgot to mention this, that these games have been going on for years. It's an annual occurrence. And the winner of the 2005 game was the older brother of the detective who becomes the front man in 2021. So it shows there are years in mythology of the show that exists and could be explored and could be expanded on.
Yeah.
I mean...
There were some plot holes with that, though.
Well, yeah.
I don't know if you noticed the sort of plot hole. Like the bloke that won, was it 2016? Yeah. The bloke that, his brother... so he won it in 2016, but he's only just realised that he's missing.
Yeah. Perhaps they weren't close.
Wait, I don't know, and and also he realised because of like missed rent payment or something like that.
I mean,
I don't know. You'd think
you could go as well, right? You could go Hunger Games in a style and go flashbacks to the first game and how it was all set up with a younger version of Oh Hill Nam. So that could be pretty good. Or you're going to get a new class of participants with Ji-hun on the outside trying to take them down John Wick style. So there's plenty of options for Season 2, but doing my research on it, officially Netflix have not confirmed the second season yet, which is crazy because by the end of October it had over 142 million views, which does make it Netflix's most successful show of all time, doubling what Bridgerton did the last year. Now the creator of the show...
It's actually crazy.
Yeah.
If you think how many decent shows are on Netflix, that a South Korean a show that people have got to read that show. Yeah. People are lazy. I'm lazy. I don't,
Well, I think you got
to read subtitles.
You have to read it, mate, because the dubs are very terrible from what I've heard.
One thing you're going to take from this, if you're going to watch it. Don't watch it. It's subtitled.
I feel bad now because the reason that it doesn't appeal to me is the subtitle element because I'm lazy. So it's out there. That's it. That's why.
That is the irony of a writer who doesn't want to read subtitles, isn't there?
I know, there is an irony there, isn't there? But I will watch it, don't get me wrong. It sounds, the more you talk about it, it sounds a bit more like it's my sort of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it than the basic setup, which I think. And getting on to the, like I say, what they're planning for the next series, the creator of the show, Hwang Dong-hyuk, has cleverly said in the media that for making Netflix's most successful show of all time, he actually wasn't paid a great amount. And no, he's certain they'll be doing a second series. I think he might well be rich enough after the lawyers negotiate his deal for the second series. But from one South Korean powerhouse to another, in Yong Sang-ho's Hellbound, which is also just dropped on Netflix. Yep, the South Koreans are taking over, or in media at least. Now, this director made his name back in 2016 with the massive worldwide hit Zombies on the Train, which was called Train to Busan. It did have a less received, but still, in my opinion, a very, very good sequel that came out in 2020 called Peninsula. And that shared a lot of DNA with Army of the Dead in that a team were venturing into an unsaved zombie area to steal something. Now, Hellbound. This is like a cross between The Ring, The Leftovers, and Midnight Mass. I'm about 3 or 4 episodes in at the minute, and I think so far, I prefer this to Squid Game. The basic setup of the show is that apparitions start appearing to tell people they're going to die in a week and at what time and where, and that their soul is bound for hell. Now, when the date is reached, 3 giant CGI smoke monsters teleport in from hell, beat the living shit out of that person, and I mean really pummel the fuck out of them, till they finally incinerate them down into bones, leaving them looking like Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru from Star Wars. Now, what made this show surprising is that everyone in Korea is at least aware of these events. They're live streamed, people are talking about them on social media, they're watched on TV, everyone is aware of it. And so that whole kind of religious aspect starts taking over society. Once again, our main character is Jin Kyung-hoon, and he's a detective with a wayward daughter after he was recently widowed, as he tries to, and he gets like, oh, what I love the fact is, you've got CGI smoke monsters from hell, and this cop has got to go and investigate it like a regular crime. And you can just see the look on his face like, well, how the fuck am I supposed to do this? And with the scale of these events and awareness growing, cults and religion spring up, and just like Midnight Mass, you have this religious fervour beginning to seep into the consciousness of the whole of society. And the show addresses how a society would react. How would we react if monsters from hell suddenly appeared and started sending sinful people to hell? I mean, how do you quantify what is sinful behaviour in this day and age? And, I think in the long term, unless the show misses a landing, this is going to be a much more rewarding and talked about show than Squid Game. So, yeah, Hellbound, definitely check it out.
Are all episodes already out?
Yeah, it was Netflix, so all dropped at one time. I think there's only 6 or 7 as well.
Okay, it's probably already missed the beat then to be on the same level as Squid, because when Squid Game came out, it was all anybody was ever talking about. And I think you're the only person that I know that's actually watching.
Well,
Hellbound.
apparently, Hellbound has actually beaten some of Squid Game's ratings in certain demographics already, because everyone was looking for the next Squid Game, and so when Hellbound dropped, people were just like, "Oh yeah, it's the next thing. Let's watch it." And so I think it depends which metrics you look at and how it's done. But I know Netflix have been promoting that it's just as big as Squid Game. But I'll tell you, mate, I think it's better than Squid Game because it's not as derivative as Squid Game was. I mean, that's just saying I like Squid Game. I don't think it's right up there at the top. I think it's a solid 7.
Squid Game for me was a solid like 7 days.
Yeah, exactly.
7 days.
I give it 7 Neils. I think Hellbound by the end could possibly be an 8 or a 9.
Okay, interesting. No, you've made me. You've pulled my arm, Neil. You've done a good job pitching that. I fancy giving it a go.
I said it's like Midnight Mass, which is one of your favourite shows of the year. So clearly,
yeah. But then again, I haven't watched the next film that you guys are going to discuss. And by the sound
next show, David.
I'm going to want to watch that as well.
Yeah. So next up,
there's a lot of TV shows I need to catch up on.
There is an absolute metric shit ton of stuff out in a minute. And next up, we are going to be talking about Apple TV Plus's Foundation. Now, this is an adaptation of Isaac Asimov's epic sci-fi. Now, when we say about Star Wars in 1977 ripping off Dune from 1968, lest we forget that Asimov first published Foundation as a series of short stories between 1942 and 1950, which was a trilogy of Foundation, Foundation and Empire, and Second Foundation, before Asimov added 2 sequels and prequels in the early 80s. So essentially, he wrote them to, pay the rent when he was younger, and then 30 years later, they were kind of reassessed as like titans of the genre, and everyone should appreciate this guy while he's still around. And he actually got to go back to the story and do another couple of sequels in the last sort of 20 years of his life in the early 80s. So always nice to see. So I was going to say the basic plot of this show, but I mean, Christ, there's a lot of plot in this show. It's almost... I'm just trying to think of the simplest way to do it. So I would say that in a distant future, there's an empire called the Cleonic Dynasty, and they have ruled the galaxy with clone after clone of the same man, Emperor Cleon I, so to ensure his lineage and rule will never end. At any one point, there will be 3 clones of Cleon, a younger, an adult, and an older version, all coexisting at the same time with the middle clone ruling. Now, at the same time, famed mathematician Harry Seldon, played by the always brilliant Jared Harris, develops a field of predictive mathematics called psychohistory. Are you still with me, David?
Yep. Clones, history, maths, got you.
Brilliant. So, Seldon's work leads him to predict that the Empire is going to fall, and it will be catastrophic with billions dead. Seldon invites a young prodigy called Gail Dornick to work with him, and soon both are accused of treason by the Empire for their views. Now, while they are awaiting their fates, terrorists attack the Empire's homeworld, causing the deaths of millions. And this opening scene, David, I've visually on TV, I've not seen anything like it in sci-fi. The scale and scope of the Starbridge attack is amazing. Rather than death, because the Empire's not 100% sure whether they're full of shit, Harry and Gale are exiled to a remote planet called Terminus on the edge of the system where Harry will be allowed to build his foundation. And that is a repository of human knowledge that he claims will help humanity out of the Dark Ages much more quickly if the Empire collapses. So it's kind of like the Empire hedging their bets, going, well, okay, we're going to stick him out on a planet in the middle of nowhere, and if it does turn to shit, he's there, and we've got the stuff. And also, if he is full of shit, everyone's going to forget about him and leave him there. That's the kind of base broad strokes of what the first episode sets up, but there is a lot to get through. I mean, it's super hard, it's dense sci-fi, and I am going to make Dune comparisons. And it's funny here because you've seen Dune, David, and you haven't yet, Charlie.
Yes.
And I would say Dune, this is like the TV version of Dune. It's epic in scope, it looks amazing, and you have a story that literally jumps between different time periods. You know, you've got warring galactic empires. Sounds very familiar to Dune, right? Doesn't it? But again, this was written about 30, 40 years before Dune. So there are bits where you jump time periods, literally hundreds of years have passed, and then you go back again. As the show progresses, we get many different plot lines. You know, you have the characters on Terminus who are trying to set up the foundation. There's a mysterious vault. There's an artifact that repels anyone who tries to go near it. And the more you learn about the Cleonic dynasty, you get this brilliant performance by Ronan the Accuser himself, Lee Pace, as Brother Day, who's the current ruling... Well, he's current in that episode before they jump forward, another 100 or years so. I mean, indeed, for a show that appears to move glacially slowly at times, Foundation does get through a lot of plot each episode. Yes, the pace is slow, but after seeing all episodes of Season 1, I think you and I both agree, Charlie, that it just gets better and better each episode.
That's absolutely the case with this one. Again, not necessarily my chosen genre, but probably what my favourite thing I've watched this year, which is quite a claim really, considering some of the stuff that's been out. But yeah, it does start quite slow, and there's a lot of scene setting and a lot of characters introduced, and which is a similar complaint to what I had for the Wheel of Time. But I think this is done. It's done better. It's very, very skillful, and the thing I love about this, I guess, from a writer's point of view, I suppose, is that there's some huge themes in there. You know, you've talked about terrorism, which is absolutely a theme, but there's also, religion plays a big part. There's the small guy being bullied by the big guy, which is part of society. Massive stories, but also they drill right down to individuals and a number of individuals, and every one of their stories is fascinating, and you want to learn more about them, and you're invested. And a lot of TV shows and stories and films, they have a central character that you follow, that you're invested in, and that's enough to lead you from start to finish. With this, I mean, I don't know what you think, Neil, but I couldn't tell you who the main character is or what the main story is. I mean, there is an overarching idea of the Foundation and what that is, and defeating the Empire, but again, which is probably the main story, but I'm not sure who the main character is, but it just works brilliantly. It's fantastic.
Exactly like you say. I think in the first episode, you're like, okay, Jared Harris, he's the main actor. He's going to be the main character.
Yeah.
And then he disappears after 2 episodes. And you're like, oh, okay. Is he going to come back? Yeah. And you're just like, okay, well, who is the main character? And like, what it does well is it because it balances all the different factions, and you've got the terrorist group, you've got the people on Terminus, you've got and you've got the Empire. They're kind of your 3 main groups. And so as you get more episodes into it, you start going, okay, these are our 3 kind of main locations. You've got the Anacreans, who are one of the terrorist groups, attacking Terminus, which is where the Foundation's being set up. And technically, Terminus is still under part of the Empire. But again, we're hundreds of years in the future from when they first got there. They've had no contact really from the Empire at all. So you have the story of the Anacreans trying to almost goad the Empire into a fight out on the edge of the universe. And their whole reason for doing this, and this sounds very Star Wars, David, is they end up doing it so they can get control of a star-killing super destroyer ship. I forgot the name of the ship, but it's essentially like a Death Star.
Is it called the Star Destroyer?
No, it's not. It's got a better name, actually.
Just swap the words.
I can't remember the name of it, but it's got a much better name than Star Killer Base. I'll tell you that much. But again, and you think this was written in the 40s, so again, Star Wars got a lot to answer for, man.
The Invictus.
The Invictus, yeah. Invictus. Much better name.
And I was just going to say again, the Invictus reminds me of the atmosphere of the whole thing has just been so good as well. And there was a scene where the Invictus, they're on the ship and it's about to jump somewhere else, and that means a certain death for the crew, and it's a desperate scene. But there's a countdown on the ship, and until it jumps. And even the noise they used to represent that countdown, and the lighting at the time was. For tension, it was perfection. I know it's a strange detail to pick up on, but I think sometimes when you look at these shows and you're trying to find out why they appeal so much, the devil is in the detail. And what they've done on that show, I think, is I think they've really looked at every little detail and made it right. If that makes sense. Do you know the bit I mean, Neil?
Yeah. It's the ship is about to jump, so they haven't really got control of it, David, and so it's kind of got this neural interface where you kind of have to plug yourself into the ship to control it. But because and I think I'm not 100% clear on this bit, I think because they're a different race of people, or the main characters, their physiology isn't designed to pilot it, that by doing it, it's probably going to kill them. But someone has to make that decision so that they can pilot the ship and take it where they want to go, rather than wherever the hell the ship keeps zipping off to.
It's the Armageddon scenario.
Yeah, but done a million times better than Steve Buscemi jumping up and down on the missile going space crazy.
But the tension in that episode was so well done, and again, that's right down to those little details. It's overall, I've been so impressed.
So what you've explained, at the moment, everything sounds really confusing. You're saying like there's all these different factions.
There's three. There's essentially
all of
three.
These different. Okay, 3 different factions, but you're saying there's different time periods as well. Do the same characters go between the time periods?
It is one of those shows that you to sit down and describe it, you would probably never be able to do it in a way that would make someone want to watch. I mean, we've spent 10 hours with it now, and it's starting to make sense. If that makes so you're talking about a show it's very complicated. It does jump all over in relation to times, locations, characters, and stories, but it is done in a way where it's one of those shows actually where you have to concentrate, and you can't be on your phone or have it on in the background. And it is one of those few shows that I make sure that I'm watching it where I can sit normally, sometimes even with headphones in, and actually watch it. And I think that's testament to how good it is, because not many shows get that much attention from me.
Yeah, it's a definite clear out the. I mean, I usually do it like late on a weekend when I was watching it. And I put my headphones in, sit up here, and just watch it with absolutely no other distractions. I think, I mean, it's not that. It's a bit. I think it's got this kind of thing that they're hoping Wheel of Time's going to be. The difference is though, this starts brilliantly well. The action scene with the terrorist attack in the first episode is just visually stunning. The set design, the location, and this is what there's actually an official Foundation podcast, and each week the producer of the show, David S. Goyer, he tells you about the making of the show and spoilers for each episode after each episode. And I literally listened to the whole thing in the last week because it was just, because it's such a complicated show. I wanted to see what they were thinking and try and make sure I had actually remembered everything properly from the show. And one of the biggest things that stuck out for me was Goyer saying most of it was filmed on location. He goes, I didn't want to make another one of these big CGI, everything's filmed on a green screen in Los Angeles sci-fi shows where you can tell it's blatantly fake. He goes, obviously there is lots of CGI, but we are in those locations. He said, and this was.
Do they use practical effects?
There's a big mix of
CGI.
I wouldn't say practical effects, more practical locations. So in one episode, he said, like he said about. So for example, he said, right, Apple, I want to go to this country to film, and I was like, why can't you do it in the studio? He goes, because you won't look right. Okay, and then. But you can only go to one country. So they went to Iceland to shoot at the start. And he said it was a complete nightmare because they wanted this volcanic wasteland for Terminus. And he goes, and they didn't realise how bad the weather is there when they were there. So it was like windy, and he said they'd lose whole days of filming because of just like the sound couldn't be used. And I was thinking about, can't you ADR, but like just stuff. They couldn't even hear themselves communicate on the set. It was that bad out there. So they actually ended up repositioning, going to the Canary Islands into the volcanic regions of Spain, and I guess just using some really good colour correction work to give it that kind of blue tones. But essentially, to like have this kind of volcanic wasteland, that's what Terminus is. And like for example, they did a Game of Thrones in a way, and of course Apple's got the money, right? So for all the scenes of the Empire and all their like great ornate cities and all that. That was filmed in Berlin. And the money is there on the screen, man. It's just, visually, this is one of the best looking TV shows I think I've ever seen. It's like when I watched the first series of The Mandalorian, and there was, every frame could be a painting. And that's what you get with this show. It's so visually, and that's what I say. I think it's got in common with Dune. It's got the slow pace. You're not 100% sure what's going on all the time, but it's so well done. I would say the acting in it as well is a much more high level than what you get in Wheel of Time. And because the acting's so good, that obviously draws you in more. You want to, you start caring about the characters. And what I like about it is as well, no one's truly the good guy or the bad guy. You know, you have the Empire questioning, if the Empire were all out bad, they would have just killed Harry in the first episode. But they're like, well, let's not hedge our bets. Let's not kill him. Let's put him away in the middle of nowhere and just keep an eye on him.
Yeah, you've got your morally grey characters.
Yeah. And what's good is later on in the season, you find out that one of the clones is starting to act differently, and that leads into a really big plot line towards the end of the series. It's one of the key things. And you start feeling really sorry for this clone, because if there's any imperfections in any of the clones, they're immediately vaporized and they just hatch another one. And so you're finally starting to, feel something for this. You can't starting for the younger. You've got Brother Dawn, Brother Day, and Brother Dusk, they're called. And they're all called Empire. Later on, you have an amazing episode called The Spiral, where Brother Day, Lee Pace's character, he goes to another planet, because although they are in charge of the Empire, there are all these still other religions around the galaxy. And they kind of almost over the millenniums, they've always had a hand in the politics. It's kind of like them saying, right, you're going to be Pope next. And then on one of these planets where there's a massive, one of the biggest religions in the galaxy, the woman is set to take charge, who they don't want in charge. So he goes off planet for the first time ever in his life and goes there, and he kind of goes on. You really get heavy into the religious illusions with it. They have a thing called the spiral, where you walk through the desert with no shoes and you're not allowed water. And if you drop to both knees, that's it. You're done and you'll die out there. And he he's been protected his whole life, the Empire. Yeah, they have body shields like you have in Dune, so no one can touch them. It's that whole kind of very slow. Do you know what? There's so many similarities now. I think about it.
So how many Charlies and how many Neils are we giving?
This is a 9 for me.
Yeah, I think you've stolen my thunder. You can't give anything a 10, can you, these days? So I would certainly. It's a high 9. 9 Charlies.
Yeah, and also, David, season 2 has already been confirmed. They're already starting on that. And producer Goya has asked Apple for 80 episodes and 8 seasons. Well, one down, 80 episodes. Which in the TV landscape
80.
isn't a lot, if you think about it.
Blimey. It's not, I guess, yeah, but that's a lot to be like, okay, yeah, we're going to give it 80. We're not going to... And
really?
If you're planning for 80, you've
I think they were smarter by front-loading the first episode of season 1 with some really good action scenes. And then as the pace picks up, it doesn't let off till the end of the season. And all the storylines, the various storylines, all start hitting at the same time. So like I say, when it's a bit slow at the start, you're like, oh, well, that scene was a bit slow. Oh, and normally in a show, you'd cut to the next scene, and that scene would be the more faster-paced one. But you cut from slow scene to slow scene. But then it's done, definitely, because as the show moves on, as the show moves on, like I say, each different storyline all starts firing on all cylinders at the same time, which leads up to. I think I saved the last 2 episodes to watch back to back in one go, because it was just amazing. Yeah, definitely. I mean, can't highly recommend it anymore, David.
Okay, all right. So I'm probably not going to watch it.
Yeah, but
you haven't sold it to me now. I'm just joking. I was sold to me in the first 5 seconds when Charlie said that it's the best thing he's watched this year. Like, it was already sold.
I feel we did pretty well.
I was done.
I think we did pretty well staying away from major spoilers as well. I think we did good there.
Yeah, I struggle with that, because there's an amazing scene, and this is not a spoiler, but it's a slow scene, so you're talking about action and bits and bobs. It's a slow scene, just mainly dialogue. And then all of a sudden it's revealed as it's an assassination scene, and it's one of the most beautiful assassinations I've ever seen. So you've got to see it just for that, David. That should spark your interest.
Yeah.
A beautiful
Yeah,
assassination.
it's incredible. That
okay.
episode actually is part of the spiral that Neil mentioned. There was some incredible dialogue when he's walking the spiral and he meets up with someone else doing it, and the reasons for doing it are sort of compared. The dialogue in that episode, again, I guess that's kind of my thing because I love stories.
Okay.
It's worth it.
You've twisted me. It's gonna be. I'll do it.
Wasn't there's the line when the character in the scene says, "I'm not leaving this room alive, am I?"
It's incredible.
And there's no raised voices, and they sit down and they talk, and they know it's coming.
It's incredible, and the woman, the assassin. I won't ruin it as to who it is, but has some of the most incredible scenes. My favourite character.
What like sort of are we talking like Heat? Like, you know, in Heat where they're
You have to watch it.
The scene where they're in the cafe. Are we talking like that level of?
But that was an assassination, though.
No, I know, but we're just talking dialogue. Like the dialogue in that. That's the first thing that came to
very,
my head where it
very
was
good.
Like, bam, that's the best level of, you know. Are we talking that?
It's very, very good.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. I'd say it's on the Heat level. It's good, and like Charlie says, the performance by the actresses in that scene are just spot on. It's so good. Right, I think that about wraps us up on Foundation, and on to our last show of the episode, which is Netflix's Cowboy Bebop. Now, I've recently binged all 10 episodes of this, and it is based on a well-loved anime, also called Cowboy Bebop. And you know what? For me, I think it's one of my shows of the year. I truly do. It's set in the year 2171, and we follow the adventures of a mismatched group of bounty hunters chasing down intergalactic criminals on their ship, the Bebop. Why Bebop, you say? Well, it could be because the ship's owner, Jet Black, played by Mustafa Shakir, is a massive jazz fan. Jet's a former disgraced police officer who pretty much does everything he does for his estranged daughter. Our lead character is John Cho, playing the very Chandler-esque Spike Spiegel, who has a hidden criminal background, but he's also an amazing fighter and marksman. Now, he and Jet are the Bebop's primary crew, until the two of them run into fellow down-on-their-luck bounty hunter, Faye Valentine, played by the definitely making a name for herself, Danielle Pineda, who is constantly in trouble as she tries to find out who was responsible for stealing her memory. So, you know, you've got Jet, who's doing it for the money, and finding out why he got set up when he was a cop, and you can see his story there. Then you got the secret backstory of John Cho's character, the main character, Spike, and then you've got Faye, got her storyline with trying to find out who stole her memory. So you've got your three main characters within 2 episodes, and do you know, it's fun for me.
I'm going to stop you right there, Neil. I've watched 3 episodes. I don't know why the captain of the ship, the cop, I don't know what his motives are, really, for doing it at all. Might have been hinted at slightly, but not properly. The third character you've mentioned, I don't even think's been introduced for me.
She's in the first episode.
The first episode. I know I know the one you're talking about then. I know who it's going to be, but she's not been in it since.
You've only watched... Okay, but episode 4 she comes back then. I watched them all in like at one go, man. But essentially, the 3 of them become the ship's main crew, right? Rounding out the cast, you also have Eleanor Satine as Julia and Alex Hassel as Vicious. One of them's his former lover, and the other one's his best friend turned nemesis. But I mean, where to start with the show, right? Now, I've vaguely heard of the anime, but I've never seen it, so I don't really have any comparables to make.
It's on Netflix as well at the moment. You can watch it.
Yeah, I know that now, David.
Okay.
Which actually, not comparing the two, really honestly seems the healthiest way to review this show. It's a genre-bending original that is part and deep breath, sci-fi, western, Asian-infused, 70s style, jazz-filled, film noir, Firefly vibes, or imagine you following Chewie and Han on their smuggling days, travelling planet to planet and getting into scrape after scrape. It's a lot, and it's just so many different things mixed together. Now, on your pros and cons, it's some of the most fun I've had watching the show this year. You know, like you said, where there's some shows like Foundation where you have to really pay attention. You have to, fully immerse yourself. This is so easy to watch and just fun. I mean, for me, the dialogue is razor sharp, and it just the banter between the main crew is brilliant. Jet Black reminds me of an intergalactic Terry Jeffords from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, right? He's a big guy, and everything he does, he's doing for his daughter. I mean, that's literally his storyline in the first 2 episodes, David, is he's trying to buy this Sally doll for his daughter.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be any much more.
Have you watched it?
Yes, I've watched it. Neil mentioned that we were going to be talking about this, so it was a show to watch prior to coming coming along here. So I did. I started watching the first one, and this is a strange old show for me. I have to say, I was 10 minutes in, the opening scene in the casino. I was doing the whole rolling eyes, and it was basically every cheesy action movie bingo. You know, everything had been ticked, even to the point of dropping a coin and volleying it at the bad guy and it coming off his head. And I thought, this is not going to be... But I just kept watching it, and I ended up just really enjoying it. It's just a lot of fun. I think you have to kind of accept... You have to be a bit open-minded and see that it's trying to take the mickey out of itself and out of a million genres. I mean, Neil mentioned that, and oddly enough, my wife come in... We normally watch shows together, and she said, what is this? I said, oh, it's Cowboy Bebop. Well, what's it about? And I said, well, it's kind of like a cross between Deadpool, Ocean's 11, The Mandalorian, Die Hard, Alton Carbon, and set in the 70s, but it's a Western. And she walked out at that point. And I don't think she's interested in watching it. But you can't describe the show. It's just bizarre. But a lot of fun. It's a bit of a riot. And some of the one-liners, and I know, Neil, you mentioned it there. We watched one last night, and one of the characters announces that they need to speak to someone. He said, right, that's it, we need Woodcock. And the bloke replied, I'm praying that's a person. There's just little moments where you think that's genius. And you talked about
yeah, that was the one I watched last night.
Well, there you are.
I think that. Yeah.
You talk about the captain who wants the doll, and another thing he wants to buy is 2 B-days because he wants one for each foot. And you know, these moments, you're just like that. That's genius. But they're kind of hidden in amongst what is basically a cheesy, classic, sort of 80s action movie, really. But done really well. I like it.
Okay, for me, I've only watched 3 episodes so far. Did you say you'd finished it, Charlie?
No, we're about four or five in. It's one of them shows we keep watching. The wife isn't actually now with me; she's watching it, and it's easy. It's easy watching.
Yeah, so I'm like 3 episodes in. I've completely lost my partner. She's gone. She's like she's there watching it with me, but she's just on her phone. She ain't paying any attention. I enjoy like you said, like how cheesy it is, how it's a mesh of genres. I do like the comedic elements, the one-liners, all of that. I think it is good. My biggest problem with it, after 3 episodes, is the overarching story that's running underneath everything. That's sort of at the beginning and the ends of every episode. The story with Vicious,
Spike's backstory.
Yeah, Spike's backstory. It's not there for me. It's not as
that's okay.
Interesting or as engaging as I think it should be at this stage in the show. Already, like 3 episodes in.
Do you know what? I had the same thought when I was watching it, right? I was like, Vicious is a bit pants.
Yes.
Julia is a bit pants. They were very generic, uncharismatic characters. But there's a reason for that, David.
I'm not sure on Faye.
Right,
I don't like Faye either. She's a bit annoying.
I love Faye. I think she's brilliant. But again, I don't think every character is going to appeal to everyone in it. And as the show goes on, and then you learn more about Spike's backstory, and it's a very deliberate, definite choice how the way Vicious and Julia are acting now. And as you get towards the end of the season, they're like suddenly there's one episode where you're like, shit, Vicious is really cool. He's charismatic. He's good. Why haven't we seen this before? And you find out why. And the same with Julia. I think she is probably the weakest character in it. And there's a big change apparently from the original anime in what they do at the end of the season. But the original anime was only 1 season and 26 episodes. And I think they have to change quite a bit of where the show's going to go if they want to keep doing more seasons of it. And I definitely think they're going to. One of the things I loved about it as well was the production design. I mean, I love seeing spaceships dock in the water like cruise ships. And it blew my mind when I saw the ship docking in Auckland, having actually docked in that same port myself years ago. I was like, that's downtown Auckland. That's where there's a Mexican restaurant just around the corner from there. Obviously, it wasn't in the film. It wasn't in the show. But I was like, holy shit, I've literally, and I've never seen that. Spaceships docking in water. Of course, they're a ship. Why wouldn't they? It's just one of those little touches. I mean, the visual style and cinematography, like you say, it feels like you're watching a 70s exploitation thing. I don't think there's any shot where the camera's straight. Everything's on an angle all the time, and the visual and cinematic references, there's so many in it. I mean, the very first episode, when you have the couple who are like stealing drugs, that shot where they walk into the bar is straight out of Desperado. That is literally when they walk into the bar when Antonio Banderas and Salma Hayek. And you know that reference when you watch it. You're just like, where have I seen that before? Shit, it's Desperado. I mean, and you're watching it and it's fun. And then there'll be a crazy bit of ultra violence. And you definitely got some of the Tarantino vibes from it as well. I just love how, I mean, there's an episode coming up, right, where it's essentially most of the episode is just Spike and Faye arguing about what bounty they should take, and they get more and more drunk as it goes on, and they don't go on a bounty. And then the side story is Jet teaming up with a former colleague, and to find, investigate his backstory a bit, and you get a full-on film noir style story. They like dresses in the trilby hat and has a big long jacket on. And do you know what? That opening title sequence is perfect. It even made me appreciate jazz, which I hate. And on that title sequence, as you notice, as the episodes go on, what it does, every single shot of the opening title sequence is taken from an episode in the show. So as you get closer to the end of the series, you're going, oh, that was in that episode, that was in that episode. Also, David, you haven't seen the episode with the dog in it, right, yet?
I've seen an episode with the dog in it. That was the last one I watched. With the corgi.
Okay, so, yeah.
They just picked the corgi up.
Yeah, that's one happy dog, isn't it?
He's adorable. He was the best thing. In fact, Natasha was just like, can we get a corgi? She weren't watching the entire thing. The corgi pops up and she pays attention.
Yeah, so, I mean, I love it, man. I'm torn between this and Foundation, like one of some of my top shows of the year. I mean, Foundation is just on another level in terms of scope and scale and just epicness, and this is just fun. It's just fun, man. Like I haven't watched a show this easygoing in so long, and I really hope we get a second series of it. Critical reaction's been a bit mixed on it, but I mean, like I say, I haven't had this much fun watching the show since probably like Firefly back in the day. It's space, it's sci-fi, but it's Western, but it's Asian. That's what Firefly did really well. The banter between the crew was really good. You have this overarching. I'm really interested to see where they go with the second series as well. If I give you any advice watching the episodes forward though, the main plot lines, all you need to think of is I'm watching a film noir, right? The main character is Spike Spiegel. So you just need to think of all like the classic. You got your femme fatale, you've got your double crosses, and that's what the show is. It's a sci-fi film noir, and it's brilliant. Love it. Can't say anything more on it.
Fair enough. Okay. So go on. What's your rating?
I'm giving it maybe an 8 or a 9 at the minute. I'm torn between the two.
Okay. All right.
For me, it's just as good as Foundation, but on a completely different style.
Yeah. Okay. I'm at that stage now where I'm going to probably have to force myself to watch the 4th episode. So, that's where I'm at with it.
And it sounds like you're going to plough through and finish it yourself as well, Charlie.
Yeah. I think we'll finish it. Like I say, it's reasonable. It's easy watching for us, which is quite often our criteria of an evening. So I'm quite happy with that. But I mean, I can't believe you've compared it to Foundation. There is no comparison. But then if you was to compare this show to anything, I don't know what you would choose. It's just bizarre.
Probably Firefly. Joss Whedon did he did a sci-fi western in the early 2000s that was cancelled after 9 episodes because he was fresh off all the success of Buffy and Angel. Right. And he goes, I want to make a sci-fi western. And they thought, oh, you mean allegorically like Star Trek? And he goes, yeah, that's what we're going for. Then the first episode, they literally had a bunch of cows on the spaceship that they were taking out to a ranch somewhere. And there was like an intergalactic prostitute travelling with them who would like take clients in the things. There was bar fights. There was like hired guns. And it was and you had like, Firefly. When everyone always says what is one of the best shows of all time that was cancelled and never got a chance before its time, Firefly is usually everyone's in the genre cycles favourite answer. They did get a film though to finish the storyline off, but you kind of wanted more of it. And this, I don't know when I'm sure the anime of this was done after Firefly had finished, so I think they probably took inspiration from that, and then obviously this is now taken inspiration from that as well. But I think that like I say, they're completely different shows, but to me they're both excellent and for completely different reasons. And Hellbound's going to be up there as well if it doesn't go shit at the end as well. So it's been a really, really good sort of week. It's been a really, really good month for TV in sort of November, December time over here in the UK. So, and what have we got coming up? Well,
So I was just going to say the last thing, the last thing on Cowboy Bebop. The last thing me and the wife watched together was Midnight Mass. So to come from that to Cowboy Bebop has been a bit of a culture shock, to say the least.
Yeah. Did you like Midnight Mass? What was your take?
Yes, very much. We both very much enjoyed that. I'm obviously quite a story. I love a story, so which is why Cowboy Bebop is a bit all over the place for me. But Midnight Mass was very well done. Probably slightly too long, but very good.
Okay, good. I liked it. That's the right answer.
Yeah, David loves. I'm fairly quite on a Midnight Mass is going to be high up in your top 10 of the year list, isn't it, David?
Yes. No, you'll never get number 1, Neil. You'll never get it.
Is it RuPaul's Drag Race?
It's not No, that's not. No.
Is it I'm a Celebrity?
It's not. I've not even watched I'm a Celebrity this year.
There is actually, while we got you here, Chai, there is one show actually. I think I recommended it to you in the office, but I'll remind you again now, so it's here for perpetuity. It's on Disney Plus, and it is the first. It's the new series of American Horror Story, and I think I mentioned this before that it's called Double Feature, and the first 6 episodes are the ones you want to watch. It's on Disney Plus now, and it is about a writer who goes to a small town in Maine to write his new book. And his daughter plays violin. Now, doesn't one of your daughters play a musical instrument as well?
Violin. What are you going to tell me now? Do I want to watch this or not? This sounds a bit ominous. That's the way you were talking.
It's definitely horror. It will terrify you. But the fact it's about a writer with a young daughter who plays the violin, I was like, that sounds familiar.
It's a little close to home, that one.
Yeah, you might want to... and it's all about... when he goes there, he's a struggling writer, and in the town, there's these people who are like have these pills, and they kind of what the kind of whole conceit of the new series of American Horror Story is: if you take one of these pills, it will make you brilliant at what you do. If you've got talent, if you haven't got talent, it will do something really nasty to you. And so it's judging through your main cast of characters who's actually going to turn out really well from it. And of course, as anything, when you take a pill or the magic item in these type of shows, there's a price to be paid as well. So I won't say any more than that. But it was 6 episodes, and yeah, I mean, I think it might make your daughter quit violin. That's all I'm saying.
Excellent. All right, noted.
Yeah, I've always wanted her to stop that bloody violin and make sure she wants it.
We're not. I can just see her saying to your missus, "No, watch that show. She's quitting now. She's going to go play triangle or something."
Yeah, let me tell you, there are better instruments to be bad at than a violin. Goodness me.
Right, well, I think that about rounds us up today. I'd like to thank you, our guest, Charlie Gallagher, for coming on again. And as I said, your new book, Lethal Game, is available on Kindle for only 99p. And it's just nice. I bet it's nice just to come on and chat about movies and TV shows, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. I always enjoy it because it's just like a conversation about stuff I like, which is, who wouldn't want to do that? So thanks again for the opportunity to both of you. It's been a pleasure as always.
No worries. As I said at the start of the show, as you keep no-selling David's jokes, just like me, you're welcome back more than any time.
I'm still sad about it. I had a writer's joke and everything.
Just not a good one.
It was riveting.
Just not a good one.
It was a riveting joke.
He's going again, Neil.
Just saying it again's not going to make us laugh.
It just makes it worse.
Oh, I'm going to stop.
Yeah. And that's all the time we got for today. See you next time.
We needed roads.